Ash, I'm happy you could join us.
Hey, sorry about that. That was my bad. I hate to keep people. Can you hear me okay on here?
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect, man. Perfect. Well, I got to pull up my text I had with you on the train this morning to make sure I know exactly what we're talking about today.
Well, you might be a good reference point.
Well, welcome to Cutting Edge with Charles De La Torre and Ashley Buckle from Materials Exchange, the digital exchange. Not only making transactions more transparent, creating an unbelievable amount of data on pricing that we'll be looking to roll out here in the near future at some point. So, Charles, how's everything going down with you in Bishopville today?
No, it's good. It's cold actually. It was like 51 degrees this morning.
Good deal. That's terrible for you guys. It's
yeah,
gonna be
yeah. At the beginning of May, it's real bad. Yeah,
it's supposed to be 78 here today.
Really?
Yeah, yep, 78. So we had a nice day yesterday, and walked out this morning. It's one of those tweener days where you don't really need a jacket, but you do need a jacket early and late. So, pretty interesting.
Did you just call it a tweener day?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure I heard that right.
Is that
I've never heard that before in my life.
Well, I mean, that's part of the thing about this show is you always learning something new. So you're able to learn something new from 2x47.
I did that very well last night. I was real.
Yeah, caught a little flack for that one. So let's talk a little bit about the market since you and I chatted last Monday. I don't think there's any argument that outtake is still decent, at least from what we see now next month. I think there's some uncertainty when we get into July, August, September. Probably not for multifamily, but maybe for single family and some other things of that nature, just because of the uncertainty, the uncertainty in the economic environment right now, right? I mean, heck, if you open up your E-Trade or Robinhood account right now, you don't feel as rich, right? Unless you were smart enough to buy puts on the S&P and the NASDAQ, right?
Yeah, I would agree.
So let's talk about that. A couple people told me last week, actually 3 people told me this now. I've asked them the same question. Where do you think lumber would be CME grade if there were no shipping issues right now? And went anywhere between $600 to $700 a thousand, right? Reading one of the Twitter feeds from Dustin this morning, basically, how those log costs lag so much up in Canada. The real cost is a lot higher. The real cost of production at the current log price is a lot higher, right? But as prices come off, obviously the logs drop. It's just a lagging.
It's a 90-day average, right?
Yeah, but I think I'm not sure. We've got some people on the Wednesday show that I'll ask about that. Pine is probably more of a de facto indication of where the market's at right now. I think I could be wrong on that, and it's a world you live a lot in, right?
Yeah.
Pine basically has come off of its highs, is trading. Arguably, you could probably get deals done if you're looking for things, and it's probably a little bit more fluid, more liquid, but it's moving right now. But last week Pine was kind of coming off a bite it had the week before. From what I see, that's kind of gone now, and there's probably people trying to circle around with firms, and I'm guessing they're probably a lot lower than the ask price right now. Does that make sense?
Definitely, 110% correct.
So where are you seeing that in? Because 2x4 itself, that go to the component plants, I have to guess that that's still a strong item, right?
It is. I mean, 12 foot and longer is still a really, really good length for 2x4.
Yep.
And, once again, a lot of those guys are booked out 6-8 months because of what's kind of transpired. So they've got an order file that they can hang their hat on, kind of the same way that some of the Canadian guys do as far as raw material goes. But, to kind of speak on the de facto, I guess, understanding of where the market is, I mean, our log markets are completely open based on supply and demand, right? Whereas all of our northern neighbors, their setup is a little bit different. So I wouldn't necessarily call it a de facto, more of a fact. For the very simple fact of every 200 miles there's a Southern Yellow Pine mill, and you're passing pine trees between each one of them. And you have log prices that change daily depending on what they have on the log deck and what's blued, what hasn't stained, so on and so forth. So
and they buy, and people don't understand, they buy gatewood too, right?
Yep.
Like literally the difference, a big difference between a Canadian mill being 100 to 200 acres and a Southern Yellow Pine mill being 20 to 40 acres. They don't have to build a log deck generally, very big, because they can be cutting all the time. And they have people show up at their gates with gatewood with a semi load. I've seen them down the south before with a gooseneck and a fifth wheel pulling logs sometimes, right? And
depends on the market, but yeah, I mean, that's the definition of gatewood.
And how does that work? How do they give them a number for that wood then? What do they come up with?
It all depends on ebbs and flows and demand, right? So you're going to have similar pricing structures to guys that are on contracts, right? So it really depends on, if lumber's Southern Yellow Pine's $1,200 $1,000, and they've got a 2-week log deck, they'll probably pay you for it. If it's real wet down here, they'll probably pay you for it. I mean, that's a lot of the reason why wides in the South in the first quarter and halfway through the second usually stay real tight, because you can't get to the back, as we call it, where the big logs are, because it's wet.
Basically in the bottoms, right? Or in the Okay.
So it's an interesting dynamic, but you definitely have a differentiating factor in the fact that quite frankly, Southern Yellow Pine mills are always in the market and they're open to options. Whereas, counterparts, they're hundreds of miles away from maybe a logging operation that's loading it on a rail car and shipping it in.
Sure. Well, so let's talk a little bit about where we are, where the wood is in the supply chain right now. So if you're talking about Canadian spruce in the West and the East, much of it is still probably 2 or 3 weeks ago. A lot of it was shipped sitting at the mill as that rail freight, we can argue is or isn't, somewhat cleans up. It'll start, shifting that supply down the chain, right? And that's usually what makes prices move. When you get all the inventory at one level, prices go up. When you get it at another, they go down, right? So I think the chain is trying to remedy itself. Where's all the wood in the Southern Pine supply chain right now, do you think? Or where's it?
I mean, it doesn't have as far to travel. So I don't, the supply chain is mill direct, and it doesn't have rail yards and drop yards and reloads and all these other things, the majority of the time involved in the process. So it's a much more seamless process, and it's shorter and it's faster. So That's why pine fell as fast as it did, because they had buildups and you could receive it in 2 days, not 6 weeks.
Gosh, you got no doubt. So, one thing you and I have been talking about a lot of, and my friend up in Wisconsin called me the other day, talking about pine, Southern Pine studs, Southern Pine 2 and better, 2x6, going into job sites in the Midwest now, right? And I asked him, he bought a load of 2x4, 10-foot Southern Pine up into Wisconsin. And I made a comment. I said, hey, how do your people on your job site think about that? He goes, Ash, when I was as a large framer, when I grew up in the industry, none of us really knew that much when pine came out in the job. We just knew it was a little heavier. But he goes, the people that say that pine doesn't work in traditional spruce markets are the same people that sell spruce and don't buy pine, right? He goes, on a
it's
job,
amazing how that works. It's amazing.
Yeah. So, and he made a comment to me, and he goes, if something performs in the South where there's humidity and hot weather, why isn't it going to perform better in the North where there's not as much humidity and cooler weather? I'm like, oh, that makes, so his point was he was, the reason he's buying pine is it was half the price of the spruce counterpart, right? And I think that's, as you see people gravitate, he said also, that he didn't say it. Another person told me, I need to buy something where I have product that's going to ship when I know it's going to ship, right? And get it quickly. And so I think you're seeing an influx of pine. And one thing is, a lot of the Canadian mills bought these pine mills too, and done one heck of a job along with all the Southern Pine owners that were original owners of these mills, of creating a process that really makes it a freaking nice stick of lumber.
Yeah, it's a lot different than it used to be. Not
Yeah.
only in the quality of the product, but the sheer velocity at which things can be accomplished versus having to buy so far forward and anticipate that things are going to go right. Because more hands you have in the pot, more things can go wrong. Whereas if you're loading a truck of 2x4s in South Carolina, it's got to go to Southern Virginia or Southern New York or Central Pennsylvania. I mean, that's finding a truck, having them load it, tarp it, send it down the road. It's not, well, I got to wait, and the rail car's sitting in the yard, and then it's sitting at the mill, then it's moving. Well, okay. I mean, how many cars got stuck for 5 to 10 days in transit for various reasons over the past 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months?
No doubt. I don't want to make it sound like the mills are doing everything they can to get stuff shipped. They've got a real tough deal. I mean, I was talking to Greg the other day, Riley, and he said he had a car like a week outside of the reload was sitting there, right? And in Massachusetts, it shipped there, then sat there. The mill can't do anything about that. That's just getting a line haul into your facility, right?
Yep.
But really interesting stuff. So panels, let's talk about that. We had panels in a free fall up to 2 weeks ago. Then we had a bite on them again. Something I haven't kept up with. What's going on with panels, OSB, and plywood now?
It seems like plywood. I mean, it's sustaining, right? I mean, there's some liquidity in the market, and things are moving through the supply chain because pricing makes sense. And if you've got guys that have bid projects that are 30 days old, 60 days old, and I mean, they've been on the back burner, and now all of a sudden they can buy at huge discounts. I mean, they're stepping in and buying volume. It's not something where you're buying 1 or 2 at a time. I mean, you had a $600 price swing in 10 days. So Not only the unprecedented price movement, but also the biggest consumer as a single entity is going to be your multifamily guys. So that's why they've stepped into the market as fast and as swiftly as they have. I think, moving forward, it's got a trading level, and there's still a lot of demand for it. I mean, anything we own, we're moving off pretty easy. So I don't think that's a concern. It's just a matter of how long does it last based on what's going on with interest rates. And I think that's a lot of the reason why there's a ton of lethargy in the market right now, because nobody knows exactly what's going to happen, because business is good, takeaway is good. But at what point does somebody that's playing the middle, such as ourselves, get left holding a bag? And how much risk are you willing to bear in order to accomplish the goal? And that's a scary thing given the circumstances.
Yeah, no doubt. I think there's just a lot of uncertainty, and everybody is looking at everything going on in the macro economy instead of their just little pig farm right now, right? And it makes everybody weary of doing anything big. Even though stuff like, look, multifamily, it's blowing and going right now, right? I mean, it's going well. And honestly, our single family's doing well too. So I think everybody's just afraid of stuff. And I think if you think about the positive things, there's still a lot of good outtake going on out there. One of the things that we need to clean up is our supply chain. And I think we're starting to see that in other things. I was reading something else today, where an economist on Twitter said that other items like windows are starting to, the order file is starting to shrink on that from its peak a year ago, right? It's come in substantially. So, and you see this, you don't see as many people complaining about the supply chain and anything in general, unless you're trying to buy baby formula right now, right?
Yeah, it's tough.
Otherwise,
mine's out of that stage.
Yeah. So what's your thoughts on this week going into things? How are you going to play things, and what's your bit of advice to people out there, what they could be looking at? I mean, I think you're still selling a lot of your 4-inch and 6-inch studs, right?
Yeah. I mean, as much as we're able to, I mean, being out to the second week of June, it makes it extremely difficult to have people that come to you with open arms and say, yes, please, sir, that works. Right. Unless they want to take the dive on it. But, everybody's moving slow right now. There's not a big rush to do much. And being in our position and having manufacturing as well as, wholesale and distribution and what have you, it kind of puts us in a slowdown cycle, because production is basically spoken for the foreseeable future as far as people feeling comfortable to put wood on, right? So as long as that's taken care of, and we have the opportunity to play the market and bring the best value to our customers on the wholesale side, it lends itself to a slow grind, but not really a grind, right? It's just slow moving.
Isn't it good to take a little breath and get numbers that maybe won't be so volatile, so you can just run your business with a little less fear of volatility going forward? Although,
No,
I mean,
it's not near as fun though, Ash. It's not.
That's true. Well, and I think just I don't ever have any positions on anymore where I'm at, so I truly appreciate what you do, because I can talk about it in theory and see what happens, but I'm not making or losing the actual money. It's just opportunity cost loss, right? But you're living that world, and what you have to run nowadays with the actual amount of dollars involved is insane to me. I hope you have a good banker you're friends with.
I do.
He's your buddy, isn't he?
I do have a good banker, but I mean, it's intimidating, right? Because everybody saw what happened, and they saw, OSB come off as hard as it did. Pines it stepped down, right, compared to the last peel off.
Yeah.
2 before 16 foot, 14 foot and longer, still trading in the high eights, $900. Mid nines delivered. So I mean, it came off $600, but it didn't go down to $600.
That's a good point. That's a good point. That's real demand, I guess, right?
It definitely is.
Yeah.
Because once again, being as close as pine mills are to the consuming market, it gives it the real indicator and gives it validity, because things move a lot faster and a lot smoother because they're closer.
Cool. Well, listen, we're up against 20 minutes and I've run out of things to talk about. So, I mean, I will say, because it'll be an interesting week right now when people decide to take it one way or another, right? And I still don't know what that's going to be. I know markets like to climb the wall of worry, and they always, people always say do the exact opposite. We've sold off pretty hard at this point. Do we have more we could? I mean, I don't know. Maybe. But we'll see. So make sure you join Mike and Greg tomorrow for Lumber Futures from the free seats. And then Wednesday, Greg, Matt Beamer, and I will be on, and we'll have a special guest, Russ Taylor. And he is going to talk about, instead of me BSing about statistics I think I know about from Europe, he's actually going to show the real statistics. And it'll be a good show to go to. And then Thursday, Matt Lehman and I lunch with Lumberman, and we'll close the bookends with Friday, Smart Market with Mike Wisniewski. So Charles Industrial Forest Product. If you want to get a hold of him, we'll throw his email up here. And it's Charles De La Torre on Twitter, also at IFPCD. That's Charles IFPCD. There's his email address. And also important, come to mxlumber.com. That's Materials Exchange. Sign up on our exchange, and not only will you benefit from seeing true price delivered to you, or if you're a seller, the best bids in the market to your location, you're also going to be in line to have an ability to get our data of real-time pricing, which we all know that has real value to it. So mxlumber.com, register. We want you on here, and we'll all see you tomorrow on the call. Thanks, Charles.
Thank you.
You bet.